My mother-in-law came to my house to see her grandson and said, I just want to be a grandmother, so I let her help with childcare and trusted her completely. But then she called CPS on me and filed for custody, claiming I was an unfit mother. In my family, when your husband dies at 24, you become everyone's project to fix. The moment David was killed in that car accident, when Tommy was only 6 months old, I should have known his mother. Linda was already planning to take my baby away from me, but I was the perfect grieving widow. I welcomed Linda's help with open arms when she showed up every day with casseroles and offers to watch Tommy while I showered. I never questioned why she was taking so many photos of me looking exhausted, or why she always brought witnesses along to document my supposed failures. Growing up, Linda had raised 4 children and constantly reminded me that she was the expert on babies. While I struggled with breastfeeding, she would hover over me, making comments about my milk production. "Are you sure he's getting enough nutrition from you?" she'd ask with fake concern. "He looks so thin. Maybe we should supplement with formula." When Tommy would cry for even a minute while I prepared his bottle, Linda would swoop in and snatch him from his crib. Oh, poor baby. She'd coo while shooting me disapproving looks. "Grandma's here. Grandma won't let you cry like that the way your mommy does." I thought she was just processing her grief differently. Maybe criticizing my parenting was her way of staying connected to David, of maintaining control after losing her son, but I was wrong, because 3 months after David's funeral, I found something that changed everything. I was looking for Tommy's birth certificate in Linda's purse when she was using my bathroom and discovered a spiral notebook filled with dated entries about my parenting, page after page of observations about dishes in my sink toys scattered on my floor times when I looked unstable or overwhelmed. The entry that made my blood run cold read, Sarah left Tommy crying for 3 minutes while she made his bottle. Clear sign of neglect, taking photos for evidence. That night, I confronted Linda about her documentation. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she smiled and told me she was building a record for Tommy's own protection. "Someone needs to keep track of how you're raising David's son," she said calmly. "If something happens to that baby because of your inexperience, at least there will be evidence of the warning signs." I told her she was crossing major boundaries and needed to respect my role as Tommy's mother. Linda's fake grandmother mask disappeared, completely replaced by cold calculation. "We'll see who Tommy's real mother is," she hissed before storming out of my house. But that wasn't the worst part, because 2 days later, Child Protective Services knocked on my door. A caseworker named Jennifer explained they'd received an anonymous report about potential neglect. Someone claimed I was leaving Tommy alone for hours, that my house was dangerous, and that I showed signs of severe depression and possible substance abuse. Every allegation was a complete lie, but I had to let Jennifer search my entire house and interview me like I was some kind of criminal. She found absolutely nothing concerning, but said they'd keep the case open for 30 days while they investigated who reported me. I asked, though I already knew the answer. Anonymous tip from a concerned family member. Jennifer replied, "That's when I realized Linda wasn't just being an overbearing grandmother. She was systematically building a legal case to steal my son, and I'd been helping her do it by trusting her completely." The next escalation happened when Tommy was 8 months old. I came down with the flu and was running a high fever when Linda insisted on staying overnight to help. I was too sick to argue and slept for about 12 hours straight. When I woke up, Linda was in my kitchen making breakfast with Tommy on her hip. But something felt wrong. Tommy seemed fussier than usual, like he hadn't slept well. "Thank God I was here," she said. When she saw me stumble into the kitchen, "This poor baby was screaming all night while you slept through it like you were unconscious. I had to handle everything myself." That confused me because Tommy usually slept through the night, and I'm normally a very light sleeper. But Linda insisted I'd been dead to the world while she dealt with multiple diaper changes and crying episodes. Maybe you should see a doctor, she suggested with manufactured concern. It's not normal for a mother to sleep through her baby's cries. What if there had been a real emergency? I started questioning myself. Maybe I really had slept through Tommy crying. Maybe I was more exhausted than I realized. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this mothering thing after all. That's when Linda made her first direct move for custody. You know Sarah, she said while bouncing Tommy in her arms. Maybe it would be better if Tommy stayed with me a few nights each week, just until you get your strength back. I have so much more experience with babies, and David would want his son with someone who actually knows what they're doing. I told her absolutely not. Tommy was my son, and I was perfectly capable of caring for him myself. Linda's expression turned ice cold. You're being incredibly selfish, she snapped. That baby deserves so much better than what you can give him. You're too young, too unstable, too emotional to raise David's son properly. Get out of my house, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Her eyes narrowed into slits. David would be absolutely disgusted by how you're failing his child, she snarled. Mark my words, Sarah, I will not stand by and watch you destroy my grandson's future. But the real war started the following week when Linda began showing up at my house daily using the spare key David had given her years earlier. I'd come home from grocery shopping to find her in my living room with Tommy, acting like it was completely normal to let herself into my house whenever she wanted. I was worried when nobody answered the door. She'd say I thought something terrible might have happened to you and Tommy, so I had to check. I also started catching her documenting everything obsessively. She'd take photos of dishes in my sink, toys scattered on the floor, me looking tired in my pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. When I confronted her about it, she claimed she was just taking innocent pictures of Tommy for her photo album. But Tommy wasn't in any of the photos. Then she started bringing her sister Margaret along as a witness. They'd walk through my house, making loud comments about my housekeeping, my appearance, Tommy's behavior. Oh my, Margaret would say, looking around my living room. It's so chaotic in here. Is this really the healthiest environment for a developing child? Linda would nod sadly. I try so hard to help, but Sarah resists any guidance. I'm genuinely worried about Tommy's safety and well-being in this unstable situation. They were building a case against me, and I was too naive to understand what was happening. The breaking point came when Tommy was 10 months old. Linda had been pressuring me for weeks to let Tommy spend entire weekends at her house, claiming I desperately needed breaks and that he needed the stability I apparently couldn't provide. When I refused for the 10th time, she completely lost control. You're destroying that innocent child, she screamed at me in my own Sanyo kitchen. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing. Tommy deserves a real mother, not some clueless little girl playing house. He has a real mother, I shot back, me. And you need to leave my house right now and not come back. Linda's face twisted with pure rage. David would be absolutely sickened by what you're doing to his son, she shrieked. If he could see how badly you're failing as a mother, he'd want Tommy with someone who actually loves him enough to do what's right. That's when I finally understood this had never been about helping me or honoring David's memory. This was about Linda replacing me entirely and claiming my son as her own. I demanded she return David's spare key and told her she was no longer welcome in my home. Linda left without saying another word, but the look of pure hatred she gave me promised this was nowhere near over. 2 days later, my entire world exploded. I was giving Tommy his morning bottle when I heard loud knocking at my front door. A sheriff's deputy stood on my porch holding official court documents. Sarah Mitchell, he asked. Yes, that's me. You're being served with an emergency custody petition filed by Linda Wilson. You have a court hearing scheduled for next Monday morning. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the papers. Linda was seeking immediate full custody of Tommy, claiming I was mentally unstable, neglecting his basic needs, and creating a dangerous living environment for him. The petition was 15 pages of absolute lies. According to Linda's version of events, I was severely depressed, possibly suicidal, leaving Tommy alone for hours at a time and living in complete filth. She claimed to have photographic evidence, witness testimonies, and documentation proving I was completely unfit to be a mother. I had less than 1 week to prepare for a legal battle that could cost me my son forever that night. I called my sister Emma in California, sobbing hysterically as I read her every single one of Linda's accusations. Emma had never liked Linda calling her controlling and manipulative from the very first time they'd met at my wedding. "You need to get a lawyer immediately," Emma said, her voice deadly serious. "This psychotic woman is trying to steal your baby, and you absolutely cannot fight this alone." But I was a 24-year-old widow with no savings and only a part-time job. How was I supposed to afford the kind of lawyer I'd need for something this serious? Emma flew out the very next day carrying $5,000 she'd borrowed from her retirement account. "We're going to absolutely destroy her," she said grimly. "David chose you to be Tommy's mother, not that manipulative witch." The attorney Emma found, Patricia Chen, specialized exclusively in grandparent rights cases. She took one look at Linda's custody petition and immediately recognized the pattern. "This is a classic case," Patricia said during our first meeting. "Overbearing grandparent, deceased parent, young, surviving parent with no support system. She's been meticulously planning this attack for months." "Can she actually win?" I asked, feeling terrified. Patricia's expression was grave. "In this state, grandparents can petition for custody if they can prove the surviving parent is unfit. The fact that she already called CPS shows she's been systematically building her case. We need to move extremely fast." We immediately started gathering counter evidence. Patricia advised me to change my locks, install security cameras, and document every single interaction with Linda. We collected character references from Tommy's pediatrician, my employer, my neighbors, and his daycare providers. But Linda was moving much faster than we'd anticipated. The weekend before our custody hearing, Emma was staying with me to help prepare our defense. When we heard multiple voices outside, Emma crept to the living room window and peered through the blinds. "It's Linda," she whispered urgently. "She's out there with 2 other people, and they're recording your house with their phones." My blood turned to ice. Linda was trying to capture audio of Tommy crying, or any evidence she could twist to use against me in court. Emma immediately called Patricia, who told us to document everything but absolutely not engage with them. I watched from my window as Linda and her companions spent over an hour recording my house from different angles, clearly hoping to manufacture some kind of evidence for Monday's hearing. That night, I barely slept at all. Every sound Tommy made felt like potential ammunition for Linda's custody case. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I met Patricia at the courthouse steps, where she carried 2 briefcases full of evidence defending my fitness as Tommy's mother. "Remember," she told me as we walked into the building, "stay completely calm, stick to the facts, and don't let her provoke you into an emotional reaction. Judges can see right through manipulative grandparents if we present our case properly." The courtroom felt intimidating and sterile. I watched Linda take her seat at the plaintiff's table with her expensive attorney dressed perfectly, like the concerned grandmother she was pretending to be. She dabbed at her eyes with tissues, playing her grieving role flawlessly. Judge Martinez called our hearing to order. Linda's lawyer presented first, painting a devastating picture of me as an unstable young woman, completely incapable of handling basic motherhood responsibilities, Your Honor, he said. "My client has carefully documented the steadily deteriorating conditions this innocent child faces every single day. The mother shows clear signs of clinical depression, neglects basic childcare, and has been repeatedly observed sleeping while her infant cries for extended periods. He presented Linda's photos as evidence, dishes piled in my sink, toys scattered around my living room, me looking exhausted while holding Tommy. Out of context, they painted a picture of complete chaos and parental neglect. Then, I had to sit there and watch Linda take the witness stand. I've tried so desperately to help Sarah. She testified with tears streaming down her face, but she refuses any guidance and seems completely overwhelmed by even the most basic parenting tasks. I'm absolutely terrified that something tragic will happen to Tommy if he remains in that unstable environment I listened in horror as Linda described. Finding me passed out while Tommy screamed for hours, the flu incident, discovering Tommy sitting in a filthy diaper that hadn't been changed all day, a complete fabrication, and my explosive, violent anger whenever she tried to offer helpful suggestions. Every single word was either a gross distortion or an outright lie. But Linda delivered her testimony with perfect emotional manipulation, like a heartbroken grandmother forced to expose these terrible truths to protect her grandchild. When Patricia began her cross-examination, I held my breath and prayed. "Mrs. Wilson," Patricia said calmly, "you testified about finding the baby in a soiled diaper for hours. Did you take any photographs of this alleged severe neglect?" Linda hesitated slightly. "Well, no. I was much more focused on immediately caring for Tommy than documenting everything. But you did take detailed photographs of dishes and scattered toys. Those were just... I was taking pictures of Tommy for my personal photo album." Patricia projected Linda's photos onto a large screen. "Can you please point out Tommy in this photograph of dirty dishes?" Linda couldn't answer because Tommy wasn't visible in any of the photos she'd claimed were innocent family pictures. Patricia then systematically presented our evidence, medical records proving I had no history of depression, employment records showing I was functioning normally at work, testimony from Tommy's daycare providers confirming he was healthy, well-fed, and meeting all developmental milestones. But our most devastating piece of evidence was the security camera footage. I watched Patricia play the video from that weekend, showing Linda and her companions standing outside my house with recording equipment, clearly attempting to manufacture evidence against me. "Your Honor," Patricia said the petitioner has engaged in a calculated, systematic campaign to undermine my client's parenting and fabricate false evidence to support this custody grab. Judge Martinez watched the footage with obvious disgust. When it finished, she turned to Linda with barely concealed contempt. "Mrs. Wilson, can you explain why you were secretly recording the defendant's private residence without her knowledge or consent?" Linda's perfect composure finally cracked. I was just concerned about Tommy's safety and well-being. I thought if I could document any potential problems, document what exactly normal infant behavior. Judge Martinez had seen enough of Linda's manipulation. This court finds absolutely no credible evidence of neglect or unfitness, she declared. What I do see is a disturbing pattern of harassment and manipulation by the petitioner who appears to be weaponizing our legal system to punish the defendant for establishing appropriate boundaries. The emergency custody petition was completely denied. I watched in amazement as Judge Martinez went even further, issuing a comprehensive restraining order prohibiting Linda from coming within 500 feet of me or Tommy. "Mrs. Wilson," the judge said, looking directly at Linda, "if you file another frivolous petition in my courtroom, you will face serious legal sanctions. This child has one parent, and she is doing an excellent job. Your interference ends today. As we left the courthouse, I heard Linda make one final desperate attempt at manipulation. 'Sarah, please,' she called out, her voice breaking with fake emotion. 'I just want to be part of Tommy's life. David would want his son to know his loving grandmother.' For just a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered all the lies, the CPS report, the weeks of absolute terror she'd put me through. You chose to be his enemy instead of his family, I told her firmly. David would be completely ashamed of what you've done. That was 3 years ago. Tommy is now almost 4 years old and thriving beyond belief. He has no memory of Linda whatsoever. And honestly, I think that's absolutely for the best. I've remarried since then. My husband, Michael, is an incredible stepfather to Tommy, and we're expecting our second child this spring. Tommy calls Michael Daddy and has no recollection of the chaos Linda tried to create in our lives. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about keeping Tommy away from his biological grandmother. My answer is always exactly the same. I didn't keep him from his grandmother. She chose to try destroying his mother instead of supporting her through the hardest period of her life. Real grandparents love and protect the parents of their grandchildren. They don't systematically try to replace them. Linda taught me that family has nothing to do with blood or legal titles. It's about love, respect, and putting children's needs above your own selfish ego. Tommy has amazing grandparents now. Michael's parents, who treat him exactly like their own biological grandson and love me like the daughter they never had. As for Linda, the restraining order remains in full effect. She's made 0 attempts to contact us through proper legal channels, which tells me everything I need to know about her true motivations. Some people view children as extensions of themselves to control and manipulate. Others see them as individuals to love and protect unconditionally. I know exactly which kind of person I want Tommy to remember as his real family.